Hey everybody, Sketchy here. I'm not dead. I've got the eminent Galen Halcyon here. Love him or hate him, he has opinions, many of them. And we've also got Joshua, whose Twitter handle is at Byron of Sidious. And Josh, what's your full name? You are muted. Just leave me hanging out here.
Sorry about that. My full name is Joshua T. Calkins Trilogy.
Right.
Well, he just doxed himself.
Oh my God. Drama, everybody. Contact drama alert. So you're a published author, correct?
That is correct, sir.
How many books have you published exactly?
To date, including the ones that I have pulled from publication from my original publisher, Mr. Priest at Books for a Buck, it would come to 25 total books. However, 4 of those are short story compilations. So 20 full-length novels, 4 short story collections, as well as 3 novellas.
So that reminds me a lot of like Lovecraft. Lovecraft was a big-time racist, though. Are you a racist?
I would not label myself such per se. However, I cannot control the perceptions and the labels that are put forth onto me by any other individual who has their own thoughts, opinions, and conscience.
So that response is exactly why we're doing this hangout right now. So there was a bit of a Twitter back and forth earlier, and it got Galen's red, white, and blue panties all up in a twist. So this topic, and let me bring you up to speed if you're not aware, is basically all this Nazi punching business right now. So some people are kind of in one really polarized camp saying, fuck, Nazis are bad people. They're inherently bad. And so anything you do to them is justified. There are no bad tactics, only bad targets. So punch a Nazi. You're doing the world a public service. And other people are saying it's never okay to use violence, against a political opponent. So that's kind of the general basis for the conversation we're having here. And I'm not attributing that position to anybody here on the panel. I'm just saying that's kind of the general discussion that's going on in these public spheres right now. So Galen, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
You're as bad as Tommy from the Bronx, man. I fucking tell you.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Forget about it.
I'm not living in a van down by the river.
All right, Galen. So you want to kick this off or what?
I think I have, intermediately here and there stated a few things on Twitter. I have altogether, for the most part, stayed out of things. I've had a lot of to do things. I have a lot of things to do offline with my health, that of my family, which has been concerning, and I have been withdrawn. And a lot of people have been asking about me. That's where I've been dealing with my health. I was actually tested in the hospital a lot this week. So, but today I did tweet a little bit, and I saw Joshua's tweets, and I thought it would be prudent to respond on him in a manner of dialogue let us talk this over live, and maybe it would be aggressive to have such happen, because much of the discussion in tone and manner is not progressive for people who do call themselves progressive.
Right.
You're breaking up a little bit, Joshua. Were you trying to say something?
Sorry, yeah. And to add to that, it had not been Galen's tweets with regards to the situation, as I was telling him before we got started with the audience broadcast, that brought my attention to the situation in question. It had actually been a meme, a GIF meme of the gentleman punching Mr. Richard B. Spencer, and Sonic the Hedgehog rings flying out of him. which I chuckled at upon first viewing because it's like, okay, it's kind of clever. And I had a caption above it saying, you know, the shit, they knocked all of his Sonic rings out. But this is not my first point of awareness with Mr. Spencer, and his perspective, his particular movement, the kinds of folks who tend to flock to him, and the many I don't want to say controversial, but the excitable nature of the things that he tends to say and the perspective that he puts forward as his own and that he promotes. And a lot of people I've seen come back and forth and commented and tweeted in response to this GIF, very much diametrically opposed. People saying, good, he got hit, fuck him, fuck everything he stands for, he deserves to get laid out. And on the other side, people screaming back, no, it's never okay, you can't do that, this is wrong, it's just wrong. Look at the people on the left, they're using the same violent tactics that they claim that the people on the right use. And it's just kind of devolved into this shrieking match between two diametrically opposed groups of individuals. And while I usually don't say a lot when it comes to social events, issues, or characters or personalities, or political events, views, or personalities, every now and again I do find myself opting to say something. And in this event, it turned into a series of tweets that cause this.
So do you want to like summarize your position? I don't want to bore everybody by like reading through each fucking tweet. Like, we don't have to be that pedantic, but you know, do you want to kind of lay out your overall position? Where are you coming from on this one?
Certainly. Effectively, my position is, I find it difficult to offer any sympathy to a man who has utilized his platforms, several of them, including, hold on, what was it? This should be just quick, sorry. The National Policy Institute speech that he gave on the 19th of November in 2016. A speech wherein he used a great deal of pseudo Third Reich propagandist language to effectively promote the idea that white people are simply superior to any and all other human beings on the planet ad nauseum, and calling all other individuals on the face of the planet subhuman and questioning the need for their existence on this planet, promoting, or at the very least endorsing, the notion of segregation and or the elimination of these other groups of the species. Very difficult to sympathize with anybody trying to defend him or he himself when someone from one of those, quote, subhuman groups decides to lay a fist/forearm into the side of his face at Mach speed. So while I don't agree with the personal tactic of striking this man upside the head, especially when he was not aware that the attack was incoming, I don't feel in the least bit bad for him.
So Galen, what do you think about that? Like, this is kind of your point of contention here, right?
What are you directly asking me?
I'm asking you. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I have a lot in my head, but I'll answer. I want to answer you directly.
So on the concept of, you know, punching people who might even be literal Nazis.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Okay. Well, here we go. So I want to get this first, a few things out of the way. What I say and how I argue, some people take it a bit personally. I haven't really argued with you, Josh. I really like you. I consider you a friend. I'm there for you, as I've tried to be. But whatever I say, it is not meant to be insulting, or derogatory, or a personal attack of any kind, to hurt your feelings, your thoughts. I consider you a friend and a person who has a great intellect, and I feel you can handle whatever I say. If you have any problem with it, you can discuss it with me sometime. So it's nothing. I don't feel it's low blows. I just see what I say. I feel the need to say this because so many people online don't go over rules. I believe rules and discussion and dialogue are important because everything is just a clusterfuck of bullshit, of pig shit. So I feel it necessary to explain myself, that I'm pretty blunt and how I have to say something, and I go over it. So it's not meant to be personal. I'm just going over the facts. If that causes someone to not like it, well, that's their fucking problem. I mean, that's just how I am with everyone. I'm that way with my own goddamn mother. So understand. With that out of the way, where do I feel about people punching people in the fucking street? Yeah, let's get down to this. So on Newsweek put out an article advocating for this and such positions as yours. So did The Nation. It's a magazine that I've read for a good bit of my life. They also put one, I think, in that just got put in that's questioning such, but I haven't read that one yet. I just saw it moments ago. So one of them is neo-Nazi Richard Spencer got punched. You can thank the black bloc, okay? And they show people in black running around in protests, if they want to call these protests. I question whether to call this people who are rioters. So he says the Black Bloc is not a group, but an anarchist tactic, marching as a confrontational united force, united in black and anonymized for security. Only deploy the tactic has an alchemic quality, turning into a temporary object, the Black Bloc. On Friday, the bloc I joined in D.C. numbered well over 500. And he goes in. And as I wrote in advance of the inauguration, if we recognize fascism and Trump's ascendance, our response must be anti-fascist in nature. And so he goes into this about how they have to be aggressive in their confrontation with these people. And he puts down the history of anti-fascist action is not one of polite protest, nor failed appeals to reasoned debate with racists, but direct aggressive confrontation. So we got to quickly to labeling people and just saying, you were a Nazi, fuck your humanity, and fuck failed, that debate is out, discussion is out, appealing to humanity out. It's all out the door. We're going straight for violence at this point. Yeah, I don't think that's very progressive. And it goes on and on in this about where with their radical, extremely radical views of espousing violence nationwide in the United States, with to that they're beyond reproach and beyond discussion. And they're talking about anarchists, so they're not even interested in democracy. They don't give a fuck about it, and nor do a lot of these people. I mean, every side is so fucking extreme now. It's like, no, my position, fuck you. I mean, you might as well live in a little social solipsistic community where there's nothing there. It's just a big echo chamber. I mean, I look on Twitter at people like ZJ who are arguing in favor of confirmation bias in echo chambers. Could anyone be more fucking retarded? I mean, literally go to a fucking hospital. Not you, Josh, but there's so many people out there who say the stupidest fucking things and they think it's uncontestable. This is how dumb how people are. So many people who are just, it's massive in incompetence. But at the end of this fucking article, to go to what, and I'm going to get to what you're saying, it goes into it that you don't have to fight neo-Nazis in the street, but you should support those who do. Well, this you're bringing up that this person has left his humanity alone because if someone gets them, you could see it's going to come to them. Well, they had it coming. They had it coming that they can't speak freely, and where is rule of law? Do you support this the person who assaulted him being arrested for assault, if someone punched you and labeled you a Nazi, who are the people who get to pronounce someone's a Nazi or a not a human being who doesn't have rights? I mean, if a person is arguing against such a thing and then taking up the tactic, is that not fucking pig ignorant and stupid? I mean, I'm insulted that I have to discuss this. This is fucking retarded. What am I not getting out of this? I don't get this, that people are so dumb. Who are the labelers? Who gets to have the power to label? I mean, there is no discussion online. We have the greatest communication tool online, and all people do is act more narrow-minded.
It's ironic to me. I've seen a lot of people that would actually identify as communists using McCarthyist methods, labeling people a certain thing so that you don't have to listen to them. You know, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Kind of shit coming from self-avowed communists. I'm just like, the irony is fucking staggering. I'm choking on it right now. So, yeah, like you said, like who gets to decide? Who gets to choose who needs to be silenced?
Well, who's a Nazi? Who gets to say? And what are the do we even get to know what the qualifiers of a Nazi is? What is this Nazi? I mean, do they know what a Nazi was in Germany? Do they know what Nazism was? Do they know the expansive details? Have they actually heard about it, or did they watch Indiana Jones movies? I mean, I don't even know if they've watched that. I mean, what did they watch a bad movie like Schindler's List, which is just a goddamn emotional appeal? I mean, there are great books to read about it. There are great books to read about all of this. I mean, people don't want to read books. They would rather just spout off emotionally online because it gratifies their need for their own little tribalism, because they can't get off their phones or off the computer because they're too lazy, and they'd rather cheer someone killing someone else or hurting someone else or telling someone to go fuck you, like so they are self-important. I don't think that has any value. I think that's cowardice. If you want to support people doing stuff, don't talk about it. Go off and kill someone. Don't talk about blowing up the White House, fucking hurting people. Don't talk about and cheering other people on doing it. Fuck the nation. Fuck that piece of shit magazine telling people that they should cheer people being assaulted. And what is it? It's a silencing technique. If you want, I don't support people going out there saying, if you have any different opinion than we do, that we should. I want groups that are people dressed up in black who are going to come punch me and beat me up if I say anything. That's disgusting. This is like the night of broken glass, if they're going to do that. Well, that's Nazism right there. Well, where are all the people who are ignoring this? After Trump was elected here in New Orleans and other cities, and they spray painted it all over the city and attacked businesses here. Okay, and they attacked people of all walks of life, of all skin tones. Not that anybody cares that everything is genetic and we live in a multicultural society. And they went around proclaiming black supremacy. No, let's attack everyone who's white supremacy. I'm against white supremacy. That's fucking retarded. I'm against black supremacy, or any person who pronounces gender supremacy. Anyone who's going around being a supremacist is a fucking asshole. That's just stupid. But I'm not going to support beating them up to silence them. But they don't have to go around rioting or hurting people and anything. That's fucking stupid. And if you're going to rip one of them, a person should have equality to say that all of that is wrong. But at the same time, in major publications, they're ripping people who are going for debate and peacemakers historically. I've seen more stuff since the inauguration trashing Martin Luther King after they just kissed his ass. And people like Obama and all these other warmongers are like, oh, Martin Luther King was so great. Yeah, he would be great for fucking drone strikes and all this other shit. There's so much bloodshed that people, and they say one thing, do another. That's the age we live in. And then we want to say, well, this guy who's this white nationalist Nazi, he does incitement speech. Or they'll say, get rid of Milo, get rid of this person. I don't like Milo either, at all, never have. But they just claim incitement speech, you're bad. But of course, nothing applies to this person, and they'll just say, "Well, I'm nothing. They're this." But their own heroes are also have complete immunity too.
Well, yes, I mean, bigots always manage to excuse themselves from their own bigotry. Like, there's a lot of anti-white bigotry coming out of the white left right now. Like, I would say that of the two false dichotomy political sides of the spectrum, there's more racism right now, I think demonstrably, on the left, which is really crazy to me. I mean, personally, I know this is going to get a little anecdotal, but I grew up in an area that was heavily racially polarized as a backlash of a lot of the racial tensions of the 90s. So, with Rodney King and all that kind of stuff. So what happened in some of these neighborhoods that were predominantly not white is there were a lot of white people that were afraid that their neighbors were going to fucking kill them because their neighbors said they were going to fucking kill them. There was legitimate reason to be afraid if you're that type of person. So a lot of these people banded together and literally kickstarted the white supremacist movement in Southern California. They got it back up out of the dirt, from nothing. There was almost none of these fucking people. They were such a fringe thing, and then all of a sudden they're all over the fucking place. So people like me that don't want any part of racism on either side are having to deal with both of these fucking idiots. You've got literal neo-Nazis with swastika tattoos on their neck and shit that want to kick your fucking ass for associating with the wrong people or being a race traitor and dating outside of your racial demographic or whatever the case may be. And then on the other side, you've got people saying the same fucking shit. Or this is a common line these days. You're white, therefore you're racist. That's all you need to correlate the two is the color of your skin. You are racist. Your parents or your grandparents or their grandparents, somebody down the line owned a slave. I just know that based on how you look. I don't even know where the fuck your family's from, but I can tell that by looking at you that you were a slave owner somewhere. There's some kind of guilt of the father on you. So, that shit only continues to spiral out of control as we give in to violent backlash with no discourse. That's been my personal experience on this. And that echoes exactly what's happened down the line throughout history.
Yeah, I would like to. I want to streamline what I've said, and add a few remarks so Josh can respond. And I don't want to be shot, gun fallacying him. So, like I said, accusing a people of being a Nazi is, in my opinion, ridiculous. It's this whole thing of how do you label someone, and then. In my opinion, it's a correlation problem, correlating what Nazis were with someone just being racist, or you're saying, well, you have privilege, therefore you're a bigot by birth or skin or gender or this, and say, fuck you. And there is no standards here for any discussion for any of this is what is being said, and how you're throwing out your support for it, Joshua, in my opinion, is really pig ignorant. I think that this is more of an emotional argument that you laid out in an intellectual way, not like other people who have laid it out in a pig ignorant way. You laid it out in a respectable manner, which is why I wanted to bring it up. That, how do we have standards for anything of discussion and qualifiers? Yeah, and if one person's a supremacist and another person's a supremacist, why aren't we denouncing violence while others are wholesaling in major news publications promoting violence? They're literally now promoting violence. This is a turning point. They're promoting violence to anyone, and that is an act of censorship. It's meant to subdue. If they were going out to people in the LGBT community right now, and they're saying, we're going to have a black box, and we're going to just, for this inauguration, and we're Trump people, and this guy like Spencer was going out, we need to organize and punch any one of these groups that protest in the face. I mean, I'm against that, of course. I think that I would equally, and I'm stating it now, I'm against anyone who would do that. Fuck those people. fuck, that's wrong, but I'm not wishing them to be punched in the face to silence. I want the people to speak, not to go fight in the streets. That's fucking dumb. And to promote and cheer people on is cowardice, in my opinion. I find this atrocious. So we have to understand how we label and where meaning comes from. Because in one understanding, we speak past one another. We need to speak and understand one another, not have less, because people are always talking online. We talk all the time online, more and write more than we ever have in human history. Every day, we write more than we ever have in human history, sometimes for 1,000 years. Yet we always talk past one another. Because one person's hero can be another person's villain, and we won't even understand why. Right or wrong is left out. And the brain is basically, on a neuronal level, trying to figure out, do I move left or right? Which is how we come up with right and wrong in a neuronal manner. So we don't even care anymore. We're tied in knots with as a social species. We become tribal. We fight ourselves. And that's stupid. So we have to understand how meaning works. We have to understand social languages, so we don't talk past one another, and we're not fighting in the streets or endorsing it. There are ways to protest. There are ways to protest government, and non-violently, that invites, if they are going to suppress us violently and say, we dare you to come forth and try to stop us. And that has been a highly effective manner. But that is actually being spit upon right now as cowardice, that we should go out and commit acts of violence against people and vandalize and riot in the name of racial supremacy or gender supremacy of another kind, as a revenge tactic. It's like saying for lots of feminists, well, fuck man, with woman having the bitten apple, fuck that. Man is the sinful one. It's like, this is stupid. This is a dumb line of reasoning. So from black box and then going to incitement speech, which is not even much of a conversation. And the intransigent tones that are put forth online are non-progressive. People call themselves progressive. Well, this is not progressive. Fighting in the streets is not progressive. Talking past one another is not progressive on what we're doing online. And it's not stated enough that being unwilling to listen and have critical dialogues online is not a progressive value. And going out and advocating people beat people, to censor them. When you murder someone, you're censoring them. Beating people is censoring them. I don't care who it is, that's fucking wrong. And, he mentioned, Joshua mentioned the Electoral College. I personally am going to just go out. I'm against both the Democratic and Republican Party. I think democracy has failed in America. Our democratic constitutional republic has failed. It's corrupt. Money gets its way, and the people would vote for genocide of anybody if they had a commercial that sold it on them, where they also could go and eat at Golden Corral. I mean, the people are stupid, and it doesn't matter if they're left, right, or whatever. That's just bullshit. They would do anything if they're sold to it by a politician. They don't give up. If they're told who to hate, if the left is told to hate Trump, they will do it. If the right is told to do this, they will do it. And if they're pumped up in their feed, propaganda does work. Edward Bernays, look that fucking name up. He was right on how things work. And that's the most dominant name of the 20th century, and now even the 21st century. So like, you could say everybody uses that playbook now, everyone. And it's disgraceful that we don't even talk about it. But you talk about the Electoral College being fucked. Well, the entire republic is fucked. I mean, the people don't vote intelligently. They vote on what ads tell them to do. That you want to talk about a proven fact, that's one. And people are okay with the Electoral College if it works in their favor and not if it doesn't. It's so extreme. If you have an extreme right, it's going to give an extreme left. Why? We're just driving people further apart in a false dichotomy world. which is illogical to begin with, that we can only have two. And people are like, well, with this, or that, that's the only thing you can have. No, I have the power in my life to say, I don't agree with that. I can be an individual. But right now is an age in individualism where individualism, it's not acceptable or fashionable to be an individual. You have to be with a group. You have to accept their politics and speak their politics, or you're not a person. And if you don't agree with their politics, is not a person. Individuality is killed. Everyone's saying, well, fuck those people who are Nazis. No, everyone is labeling everyone a Nazi. They could label you a Nazi. They'll turn on you and label you one. Everyone's calling everyone a Nazi, which is like when Godwin's law was first put forth. It was like the more and more a conversation online or a thread goes on, it will end with someone calling someone Hitler, Stalin, a Nazi, basically, or a terrorist. Well, the more the internet has gone on, the more everyone is doing that. So maybe Godwin's law should be revised, or this should be Godwin's law 2.0. And I think that's disgraceful. I think that I would appeal to you, Joshua, that we can all do better than to just endorse violence and tribalism and not look at people without any qualifiers whatsoever, with having blanket statements as the ones you put forth. You put them together well, which I compliment you on. However, I think those were, I disagreed with your statements pretty much outright. I do think they were put forth intelligently, and I thank you for them, but I cannot agree with you on these things. I steadfastly disagree, but not because I'm with some other side. I'm on nobody's side. I would feel that would be philosophically ignorant to be on anyone's side. It would be non-contextual. It would be not listening to your humanity or to anybody else's. I don't give a fuck about any sides.
There's another perspective too that is constantly kind of overlooked, and that's that we're not these static things that exist in a vacuum with absolutely no outside influences and no capability, no plasticity in our brains. We don't lack the capability to fucking change our minds, and if we do, then we are retarded. If you're not able to change your mind throughout time, what's the point of discourse in the first place? Then, okay, go punch all the Nazis, right? Because Nazis are bad. Even though the Nazi party is long fucking dead, finding a literal neo-Nazi, they're some derivative of Nazism. They're not actually Nazis, right? They're like white nationalists or white supremacists. Usually they don't even understand their own rhetoric. There's a huge gray area just in the definition itself, just in the label that's being applied. But that aside, even if we accept and capitulate, okay, we'll call them Nazi for the sake of argument. Have no Nazis ever been?
I would actually rather not just call them that for the sake of argument. And there's a very specific reason, because the reason people reach for Nazi as a term or as a label is because it is the most historically available, publicly common knowledge available term to use when referring to a white nationalist or a state nationalist. Because talk about National Socialism all you want, it's an ethos, to paraphrase Walter from The Big Lebowski. But just now, if I may go back a little bit and backtrack.
Sure.
You stated at the start of all of this that you didn't want to go into a pedantic read line by line of the tweets.
Well, you can if you want, but I figured it'd be more expedient.
I would like to, in order to provide context, just to answer this first question, which I will put forth to Galen, which is, at what juncture did you disagree with any factual statement in the tweets that I made? Because here's the exact verbiage of the tweets themselves. It began with, as he had mentioned, I've been talking about the electoral college system initially, which was, several have also pointed out that the commander-in-chief railed against the same said system when it got Obama a second term. The next tweet, additionally, as regards the punching of Richard Spencer, This putrid propagandist said during a speech at the National Policy Institute on November 19th, 2016, the following regarding minorities. We, meaning white people, do not benefit from their existence. He said then they need us, white people, not the other way around. This terminology easily read as supporting segregation or genocide. Later on in the same speech, he says of minorities, we were meant to overcome all of them because that is what is normal for us. This is not hyperbole. These are the man's precise words as quoted from his script in the speech delivered. Dehumanizing anyone who doesn't fit into his worldview, calling them, quote, the most despicable creatures to ever populate the planet, would, I think, understandably leave many lacking empathy for him. Do I believe it was right that he was punched, strictly speaking, by the letter of law, if he posed no immediate threat to anyone? No, I don't believe it was. However, I am also of the mind that if you treat people constantly as if they were lower life forms, no better than wild animals, you forfeit the right to act amazed when one of them snaps and attacks you like one. In short, I have no sympathy for him. Additionally, anyone trying to claim Richard Spencer is not a modern-day form of Nazi needs only refer again to the speech already referenced. His reference to the press, quote from his speech, let us refer to them in the original German, Lügenpressen. He posits members of the left are not really people at all, but golems animated by some dark power to repeat talking points given out the night before by John Oliver. This thinly veiled reference to anti-Semitic sentiment by way of referencing Jewish mythology and the Third Reich's disdain for their history and mythology cannot leave any doubt that this leader of the, quote, alt-right is a wolf in sheep's clothing, fitting given the purpose of the Nachrichten, a group to which, by the way, he has claimed great admiration and a wish that he had been a member or could currently be one. The Nachrichten, literal translation, werewolves, were a Third Reich contingent whose primary activities included, among other things, the spread of propaganda. So at what point in any of that factual tweeting, Galen,
I will get to that.
Point,
then fine.
At what point?
Yes.
Where in there do you take my?
Well,
saying,
one.
I don't.
I'll go to
let
it.
Let me ask this question. Where in there, in my saying I don't sympathize with him getting punched, wherein I say I have no sympathy for his injury, is that an endorsement of someone going and injuring him?
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question so that we can clarify this, Josh.
By saying I'm not surprised somebody did snap and hit him, is that an endorsement, or is that you reading what you want to read and saying I was just giving an emotional endorsement of violence?
Well, let's cut to the quick. Let's cut to the heart of that. Let me ask you a follow-up question to clarify your position, Josh, and then Galen can speak. So if I hit Ghazi Kodzo, aka Black Hitler, who's a black supremacist, well-known YouTuber, because he's doing exactly the same stuff, if I was to just run up to him and punch him in the fucking face, would you afford me the same sympathy? Or would that be a different circumstance?
Would I afford him the same lack of sympathy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So you're saying if you agree with somebody strongly enough because they've hurt your feelings, essentially, it's okay. Like it's relatively excusable
it's not excusable that you take an illegal act and cause harm upon another person. What I'm saying is I'm not going to feel bad for you for getting struck when you have antagonized somebody to the point where that could happen. If you know you're doing something dangerous and you get hurt, you were warned numerous times, hey, this could get you hurt, and you continue on in that vein, and then surprise, surprise, you get hurt because you did not take the time to consider maybe a different approach, maybe talking things out in a different fashion would be the way to move forward.
Would you extend the same? Go ahead. Sorry, we got a little lag here. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Or in the case of Spencer or this gentleman that you mentioned, this Black Hitler.
Yeah, Ghazi Kodzo.
If you are going to say inflammatory things, no one has the legal or ethical right to punch you, to strike you, to hurt you in any way, to silence you, because the freedom to speak your mind is sacrosanct. No one should be able to restrict you from saying what's on your mind and putting forth your perspective. No one should be able to say you can't talk.
So you're espousing classical liberal values with the caveat is basically what you're saying.
Yes, the caveat of if you're going to do that, you have to be prepared for what might happen as a result.
So if you are considered guilty of mansplaining on Twitter by disagreeing with a prominent feminist, then it'd be okay if a feminist were to run up to you and punch you in the face as retribution, or it'd be understandable at least.
I would understand why she would do it, because she is as you said.
Well, don't assume their gender now.
I assume. I'm gonna because the
you've already offended me, man. Fuck this. Where do you live?
Terminology has already been used and established. Therefore, I'm going to go in line with the terminology that's already been used and established.
I said feminist, but
if this feminist chooses to punch you because you mansplained,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sympathize with either party. I lack sympathy for a lot of people when it comes to violent altercations.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much clarified. I think the nuance of your position there outside of the 140 character limit. Would you agree, Josh?
Effectively.
Okay, so Galen, sorry to interrupt there. I thought that was important so that we don't miss each other here. But if you're ready, this would be a good time for you to respond. Do I have you, Galen? Did he get bored and wander off?
I don't know.
1 second.
1 moment. I managed to carry on for almost 10 minutes there, and I do apologize, but I figured I'd sat for close to 40 saying nothing.
I'm having throat problems, so give me 1 moment.
No problem.
Is it the dental thing?
Yeah, he's got all kinds of health problems that stem from that, secondary infections and such. So anyway,
that's got to be a nightmare.
For anybody just joining, we're basically going over this issue, the punching the Nazis debate that's kind of going around. Obviously, the positions held here are a bit more nuanced. This is not a drama fest, so if you're easily bored, you might want to fuck off now. That being said, the whole point of this is to have a public discourse and a public conversation and help air all the views out and let you come to your own fucking conclusions. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I don't think anybody here wants to tell you what to think, because that's a very stupid way to go about your life. We all have to individually, from our own perspectives and our own experiences and our own understandings, come to a realization on any given topic. So that said, it sounds like Galen's ready. You okay there?
Yeah, I'm just having some problems. So excuse me. A bit winded.
No problem. We know your health has been in hell for a couple of years now, or longer, right?
Yeah. So, but to get back to him, I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. I laid out a lot of different things, and maybe that was a bit too much. That's why I put down. I didn't want it to be shotgun fallacy. I didn't want it to be overwhelming because I threw out a bunch of different things. I was trying to clarify that this is what a lot of people are doing. And I even put the Nation article. I didn't say that Joshua supported that. However, I have problems with it because he has a great narrative form there on how he does tweets. It's actually really well done in his narrative, but at the same time, to the tone and conclusion of it, and he put it as facts that this person is a Nazi in tone. No, I disagree with that. I entirely disagree. A Nazi, if you think that's what an actual German Nazi was, I would invite a lot of reading I could give to you. Is far worse than that little prick in who had his face punched. But I would defend him if I was there. I would have defended him. I would defend him. I would defend other people who wouldn't defend me. I believe in cases like the Skokie case of letting the Nazis march. And I do have sympathy for them if they don't. Because if my rights are violated or someone back in the Jim Crow era was violated, everyone's rights are violated in the United States. This is what makes the United States special. And we're only as good as our belief in this. And I'm appealing to his humanity as something worthwhile, not to denigrate it or not to have sympathy, but to have compassion for the person that you don't, to show them what they're doing wrong. This is what Satyagraha was about, to show them even when you protested and were beaten, that they would see the pain and the blood of what was caused. But what is being advocated overall, in the face of what's being advocated, where people are now, right now, and we haven't seen this in a long time at this extreme level, where people have literally marched and advocated for black supremacy and this supremacy and gender, where all these different groups are out. And we're not in the era of Jim Crow anymore. We're not. There was the civil rights campaigns, which were a multicultural effort, were wonderful. And it took a long time. It started down here in New Orleans and with the Creoles, and it continued all the way forth. It was a great campaign, but most people only remember the civil rights era. They don't see the long history of it. We only look at the little special things that we want to, and we'll see a monument here or there. No one wants to get to the big picture of anything, but it comes down to it when people talk about, Black Lives Matter is all up in a lot of these discussions. And you weren't commenting on this, but it's part of a bigger discussion that you stepped into. And I feel I stepped into. And you're laying this notion of this person was that I will not have sympathy for them. Well, I'm arguing against that position and why I disagree with your characterization of this person and the implications of that. That I have strong views that why I'm appealing that you should have compassion for this person, and that why for your own. Wait, Chris, I'm on a roll right now on this. That it does matter. It truly does matter that you do, like in the Skokie case and others. And this problem of, like, when we think of Black Lives Matter, I saw something from Ice-T recently, and he was like, all lives matter. You don't get it. Every time a Jew lives matter, you shouldn't say all lives matter. Well, part of, like, the Martin Luther King, what he did was to say with the fat flag, which you just went through with Colin Kaepernick and everything, was spitting and just, people disagreeing with the flag, spitting on it. There all kinds of stuff went happen with the NFL this year with that. But Martin Luther King's thing was, and his was Colin Kaepernick, was linked with the Black Lives Matter one, but that people who are minorities or anyone who didn't get justice, they were part of the American flag, of that symbology, and not to be excluded from it. They were a part of it, and says, we're part of this flag too, and we can fly it. And fuck you if you don't think so. We are a part of this too. It was about humanizing and saying, if my rights are violated, so are yours. And that's a great humanizing effort. We need to humanize more, not dehumanize more, and not care and to care less. Saying, well, they did something. So you say, if someone got into something violent, you're just going to be like, well, they had it coming to them. Well, myself and generations of my family have stood up for things, stood up for people. I've been a whistleblower. Boy, that's not too popular now, especially with administrations from Bush and especially Obama. Doesn't look like it's too good for in the Trump era either. They're all equally disgraceful about such things. But I was hurt. I was injured. My uncle was. My dad has been beaten. He's had people follow him with guns to kill him and shoot up his car. As a journalist doing the civil rights era and other eras, he has worked on these things. So, but to what one person's perspective of from one cultural group of meaning to another, how do you know which one? Are you just going to say, well, I'm in this group, so I'm going to look at that group or this? I mean, how do we really know we're not in a tribalistic thing? So like I said, one person's hero is another's villain and vice versa. So to say, I don't care, I think that people have to look deeper into things and to say that they do care. We have a communication device that allows us to look deeper, and we look less. We look vaguer and vaguer every fucking day. And we're killing ourselves. We lose our humanity online. And I feel like I should cry every time I look on Twitter. It's like I'm watching death, the death of humanity. And so I would appeal to you to love more online, to care for other people. And when you see people beaten in the face, that you should care about it. That you should, and you see people preaching hatred, that you should not be more hateful, that you should have more love for your fellow man, that you should care for other people to stop the hatred in their heart, that you could appeal with love. And even if it meant your death, to do so. I think that's better. I'd rather die out going with love than to do any of that. And I put myself, and I went against people on the foundations of who are bigots and people who are, I felt, atrocious. And I won a lot of people over. And people asked me, what will you do? Will you stand alone? And I said, yes, I will. And I did. But I won a lot of people over, and it took a lot of healing with a lot of people. But it can be done. But hey, you know, I stood on the side, and certain people would probably think that I did wrong, but they don't know all the stories. But I have my perspective, and maybe I did do certain things wrong. I'm open to that criticism even, because I have to be open to listening. I have to be open to critical. And you pointed out everything was these factual statements. Yes, the guy made the statements. Do I think those are fucking racist statements? If he thinks those are his positions? I think those statements are fucking stupid as fuck and bigoted. Yes, I agree. Do I think that compares to an actual fucking Nazi? No. That's ridiculous. I think that's not factual. I think that's ridiculous.
No, but what is factual is the fact that Mr. Spencer co-wrote and produced through his previous enterprise, Alternative Right, an essay entitled "Is Black Genocide Right?", which he co-wrote with Colin Liddell.
Yeah, I read some of those things. I know
such questions as asking if we should make reparations for slavery and colonialism and apartheid, or if we should try to equalize academic scores, or if we should instead ask, does humanity really need the black race at all? Is there black genocide available to us? How would we go about implementing that? He also, in 2013, sent a signed letter to Wayne LaPierre and the NRA, begging them to disallow any and all, or to put forward legislation to disallow any African-American individual from owning a firearm for any reason, including and up to the personal reason of home and personal defense.
And as
So
I stated, I know
he wants to strip away weaponry from a specific group of people. I cannot sympathize with someone who has called for legislative action to be taken to strip a specific group of people from a tool to defend themselves from personal harm because he doesn't like them. The same group of people whom he has called for plans and actions to be taken to commit genocide. So this is not just a matter of anybody and everybody who gets provocative deserves to get punched. This is one person who had sparked my interest a couple months ago, who I decided to do a little digging on. And perhaps that was my fault in not specifying and clarifying that I don't mean anybody who says these things. It's if you continue to form a pattern of behavior and statements which ultimately culminate in us saying, okay, you are a dangerous, potentially dangerous, white nationalist, or let's just go back to the original, National Socialist, who is calling for a specific minority to be stripped of their protections legally and then executed en masse in whole. You do not get my sympathy when a member of that group whom you have targeted through your speech, through your writings, essays, and through attempted efforts to put forth legislation, you do not get my sympathy when a member of that group punches you.
Well, I want to draw your attention to one specific detail of this whole thing. Spencer absolutely talks like a Nazi. I mean, his writings sound like they could have been torn right from the pages of Mein Kampf. It's abhorrent bullshit. I think we can all agree on that. However, it's only speech at this point. But the actions of the opposition have been identical to actual Nazi behavior. Actual behavior acted out. You see what I'm saying? Every group justifies their behavior. Every group justifies their violent behavior. Everybody's the hero of their own fucking story in their mind.
There's no legal or ethical right or grounds to stand on to say, I was right to punch him, or it's right, or it's okay to go punch him. What I'm saying is if somebody does, I'm not going to feel bad for him for getting punched.
Well, I'm not saying you should feel bad for him. But what I'm suggesting is that in order to actually defend free speech, freedom of association, freedom of thought, really is what we're getting at here, is you have to defend the absolute fucking worst. And Spencer is a perfect example of the absolute worst positions that we can have in this country. He's fucking abhorrent to me. Everything he thinks is garbage. But if we're not willing to stand up and say, no, it's not okay to punch this fucking Nazi asshole just because you disagree with him, then we might as well all fucking throw ourselves under the bus, because you're a Nazi to somebody. I'm a Nazi to somebody. Everybody has a position that is going to be absolutely abhorrent to somebody else out there.
It's not ethically or legally.
You cannot draw that parallel so broadly and not expect it to fall back on you when it comes into the right hands. And it always fucking does with these things.
And it will. And again, I'm just trying to clarify. And you guys both seem to be missing me here. When I'm saying it's not ethically or legally okay to hit this man for what he says or what he advocates.
No, yeah, I think we understand you there.
Wait, Josh, I got you on that. Now,
yeah, we both understand you for sure.
Wait, Chris. Look, now with whatever things that I've had to clarify to you, do you think that you understood them? I mean, but I don't feel understood here. I feel I understand your positions.
I'm going to be 100% honest with you here. I don't understand all of it, but then again, I'm kind of a dipshit.
Okay, so. Well, let me clarify it again, because I'm kind of getting that intransigent feel from you right now, and I'm feeling a bit frustrated because you're repeating yourself like I'm stupid, and I'm feeling a bit insulted. At this point, I'm a bit aggravated. I've tried to lay something out. I tried to be descriptive in putting it out to you, and you're just being a bit like you're speaking like you're tone deaf about it, and I'm a bit aggravated because I pointed out an article that talked about what this person, he was not, and everyone wait. He was not just a person came up and was like, I don't like what you're saying. I'm going to punch you in the face. It was targeted and premeditated.
Right. I got that.
Let me finish if you didn't understand the first time. Wait. It was targeted and premeditated. And with the group of people that are doing it, are going out to do it to others en masse with a lot of people. And they're advocating more people and have more groups do this all around with anyone that they deem it. This is a social problem. And in the midst of this fucking shit, you have to be like, well, I don't care if this person gets it. And you throw your words in with all this other stuff. Well, people are en masse labeling people en masse. Everyone's labeling this. And in Godwin's law is like the natural language of universal language of people. That you have the audacity to throw your words in like this is fucking ignorant. Because, and you want to say, well, I said it in this and this and this. Well, what about my context of what I said? You're just repeating yourself over and over. I feel like you have just took and you just rolled past me and you're just trying to speak past me. I'm like, look, I agree that the person's bigoted. I agree, well, what he says and all this stuff. I don't agree with any incitement speech, but I labeled why that in the way rights and civil rights and progressive politics works, that we have more humanity to one another, towards people who are even hateful, and we defend their rights, like in Skokie. We have to no, I want to reach people's humanity, not have more hatred or less compassion to them. I don't want to. I'm trying to show you that it's like what Martin Luther King and others were doing. James Lawson is a great example of this, who's still alive, the Reverend James Lawson. If you Google him, you can find something on him. To appeal to people's humanity. And that when we talk about actual progressive politics, not in name only, that we look at what can we do to grow our humanity, but also in the name of protections and when we advocate for constitutional law. From the time of Homer Plessy and Albion, the lawyer who worked with him, and what they set up cases to contest law, not in violently trying to go and censor people and incitement. Like, well, if people want to go and get beaten if they say something. Well, you know what? I advocated for stuff and I got punched. I got beat up. I almost got killed and I got poisoned. Okay? I got attacked on many occasions for things that I've done. And I was advocating for people. Now, you could say, well, this person you're going to advocate, you're going to get your ass kicked. Well, any person can get their ass kicked. I can be called a Nazi. I mean, we have a problem where everyone can be labeled. You could be labeled a Nazi, and you're not even doing anything. You're just doing your novels. You recently were put down online for your speech, which I find horrendous. On what happened with you, I find it despicable, and you know it. It made me feel sick. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. What happened? I would bleed for you with that, for your speech, and I just want criticism to go back and forth. But when we don't even, but you're showing you don't show no sympathy. But I find that frustrating. Where is the call when you're like, well, you know, that's not right. But I'm showing you across the ground.
It's difficult for me to, in any circumstance, show sympathy. I have borderline personality disorder.
I know a lot about that. I'm with someone who has it.
And it's weird. Like, I don't want to feel like it's okay that he got hit. I know in my head, logically, that's not okay. And I also know that it's kind of terrifying to think that, you see, I don't know why I didn't catch it the first time. Maybe because there was so much other material that you were adding in there. I must have missed it when you said that they're already preparing to do this to more people.
Well, they're advocating that we rejoice and we support people who are punching in the future. They're putting articles out in this in major publications.
Right, and that's what this Punch Nazis hashtag is about and all this.
That people are having hashtags supporting people committing acts of violence, and which was an act of censorship. And the thing is, when you do this, it escalates more extreme. And people bring punches, and then they're going to be bringing guns and anything else. And it's disgraceful. It's always going to escalate. It's going to escalate at everything, and then each side is going to try to censor the other, flag the other. It is disgraceful. And what do you have at the end? Nothing but ashes. Right.
That's exactly my perspective. Like, if we can't put ourselves in the position of this person with an extremely unpopular position, and I disagree with just about every fucking word the man says, except for if, and, or but. You know, I mean, just about everything this guy fucking says. But that said, how many times have you taken an unpopular position because you feel it's the right one? Like, we have to have that ability to be able to do that without the fear of violent reprisal. And once we escalate to violence, the opportunity for discourse like the one we're having right now it's essentially off the table. You've taken it up a notch, and the only recourse is violence. Like my experience with literal neo-Nazis with the Swazi tattoos and the whole deal, they started out with that. They started out with violence. There was no discourse with those guys because that's all they knew. They were just bullies, really. So that was never on the table with those guys. But that doesn't have to be the case. It doesn't have to be. I'm pulling up a story.
Have any of these folks ever been has anybody ever thought to take these folks aside, or at least publicly say, hey, why not, instead of taking all of that energy and that effort that you're going to put into organizing an assault on someone, why not use that same time and energy to put together a fantastic essay or series of such, which can have much broader reach, not put you in jail, and you don't wind up married to some guy named Jeffrey with one tooth hanging out of his skull going, "Tonight's the night, boy."
Right, exactly. And that's exactly where I was going with this. There's a guy named Daryl Davis who happens to be black, and he's a blues musician. And he made it his personal goal to deconvert the KKK. He literally went to Klan meetings, black guy, not even close to passable as white. Stereotypical black dude, okay? He's going to fucking Klan meetings. He's hanging out with literal Klansmen, like literally members of southern chapters of the KKK. He's managed to deconvert 200 plus Klan members by just hanging out with them and humanizing himself to them.
What's this guy's name again?
His name is, I have a story I tweeted out about it the other day. His name's Daryl Davis. And they're working on a documentary about him right now called, I think it's called Accidental Compassion.
That'd be pretty neat.
Yeah, so I mean, 200 people is for one person to affect that many lives. That's not, it's not a little deal. And all it took was one guy. If you can actually have a movement around punching Nazis in the face, how fucking counterproductive is that? I mean, certainly we can sit down with a beer and say, "Hey, why do you fucking hate me? Why am I so horrible? Like, explain this to me."
And to Galen, I'm really sorry for being bullheaded and not really getting what you were getting at there. Again, as I warned Chris earlier, I am a dingbat, and I don't always get these things as quick as I probably should, or someone with a functioning brain would. And again, I apologize for not listening clearly enough, for not getting it right away, and for just repeating myself and getting defensive. I do apologize for that. That was on me.
I'm trying to show that, like in the Skokie case, and if you're not familiar, I can send you stuff about that. And I'm sure that Chris will link the book on the Skokie case.
I am not familiar, and I would need that link. I do apologize.
No problem.
Chris will explain it right after I do.
Most of my reading is fiction. You know this.
Well, this will help your fiction. This will inspire you, books like this. This is stuff that will inspire a lot of thought and creativity. And hope may this do that. I believe that such fiction and fantasy and other things help, and then the myths in those are a great reflection upon our own lives today. It's not just an escape. It is actually going inside to look at those with these arts, and they're very important. People want to know when the art is important. It's like, well, right now, it's very important. But going back to this issue with rights, the Skokie case, and others, that when anyone's rights are violated, it affects all constitutional law. We can't have this idea of special rights, these people, those people, and just see everyone as different tribes. And to say, well, I like these, I don't like them, I don't like this politics. Fuck them, we have it, fuck you. I mean, they have a law in Louisiana where if you resist the police in any way, or they say you do, you now have a hate crime on you against police. Okay? You've committed a hate crime. If you even speak to them in a certain way, you can be put forth as a hate crime against the police. They actually have a law on this. This is when you have these hate crime legislations, which in the end say, have you ever said the word nigger? Okay, you're a racist. You said it at one point. We're going to add on 10 years to your fucking sentence. This is I believe in equal due process. And I believe in making sure everything's equal in that regard, and not where it's just these specialized things. When a person is murdered, they're murdered. That's egregious, and it should be on those account. But people, there's so much going on right now. We need to understand that if anybody is hurt, or we should be advocating for rule of law and respect of that, and not putting first, well, fuck him, basically implying he had it coming. You didn't put that argument, but it sure as fuck feels that way. It sure as fuck. And as you as a writer to a reader knows how important it is when people read your stuff. You can have what you're stating, but it was like, I'm not compassionate to them. Well, that's how you feel. Well, what do you think the reader is going to feel? Because anything that's presented also needs to be understood on how the person is going to interpret it when you write. And so I feel that is going in that direction, and I have a problem with it. I really do have a problem with it, because I feel that that's causing a big problem. I feel that that's a problem. And maybe there's not much right now while I'm sick and I'm half dead living in New Orleans I can do about it. But I sure as can talk to you, someone I care about, and tell them that I believe in the equal rights and the protections of people like this complete piece of shit, that I would defend this person from a mob, even if it was unto my death, just as much as I would with you.
Well, I mean, I think,
I care about it, because that person's rights, if they're violated, mine are too. And I'm not going to let a bunch of mobs of any sort, whether they be bigoted ones or gender bigots or these people, anybody, I'm against all of those. And I'm going to speak in favor of law, not just be like, well, I had it coming, or imply that. I think it's important to put forth the notion of love and caring as a duty. We not only have a duty, in my opinion, maybe other people don't. They seem to not have a duty to fucking anything but whatever they want to spout with their emotional bullshit. And I'm like, okay, you want to do that? And you want to be invested in and about democratic process? Well, we live in a constitutional republic, democratic republic. And part of that constitutional is protecting protections. He's protected. Everyone should be protected. And he might be speaking against those protections. But at the same time, I want to ensure his are protected, just with everyone else. And I would defend other people on that. And I care about other people. And I think that in a country,
he needs to be allowed to say what he's saying.
Right, and we all have to say it, but the tactic was to silence him. It was to silence him and to silence others. It is a censoring technique, just as murder is. If you murdered me, or I murdered you, it's a silencing technique. You're silencing that voice forever, to intimidate people on that scale, and also to promote this or to show you don't care. In a lot of ways, it is. I feel we're going in a dangerous direction right now in the country. And like I said, I might not be able to show or defend that humanity for certain people while I've been ill, but at least I can appeal to all our humanity and the respect of constitutional law to you.
But you've made probably, for me at least, I think one of the most compelling point there, because I know you know how I feel about being able to express yourself, and that censorship in any and all of its forms needs to be removed. I hadn't seen this as a censorship issue before when I started making the tweets. And that is, again, my ignorance, and not thinking or looking at it analytically enough.
Well, that's the beauty of these discussions. I mean, that's why I thought it was valuable to do this publicly, not because we wanted to take you aside and beat your ass in front of everybody to shame you or some shit like that. It's because your position is not unique in this, or was not unique. I don't know if your paradigm has shifted.
But I do feel ashamed of not having seen it as an issue of censorship, since that is such a big hallmark of mine. So I do feel a bit ashamed that I did not see that before.
And there's another position too, as somebody personally who has a big problem with Nazis, like I do. The fact that this guy is actually, like, his points, I think, Spencer's points are so fucking flimsy and ridiculous that they would be easy to tear down in the court of public opinion. They would be easy to beat the fuck out of, just with plain old logic, rhetoric, epistemology. Go at it, tear them all the fuck to pieces.
And that would be fun.
Yeah, I think it would, actually. But the fact of the matter is, punching him in the face legitimizes his position in mind of people who already feel marginalized by the anti-white backlash that's going on in this country right now. It's actually lending credence to that position and adding strength to it. Just as it did with the resurgence of the neo-Nazis in the 90s in Southern California, like it's happening again with this fucking idiot. So, you know, it's actually strengthening his position to make him a martyr. So it's counterproductive, I think, across the board in terms of free speech, in terms of the issue at hand, which is his white nationalism. Like, both of these things have been essentially sacrificed for the immediate satisfaction of punching a dude in the face. It's, you know, it seems to me like a really bad exchange for those of us who actually want to have a message out there in the world that makes some fucking sense. So I don't think either side in this, you know, makes any fucking sense. Spencer or his attacker. I think they're both fucking idiots, frankly. So, I mean, Voltaire said, like, something in French, but I'm paraphrasing here, something like, I despise what you have to say, but I'll defend your right to say it to the death, right? And that's exactly what we're running up against here. I absolutely despise what Spencer has to fucking say. But if we're not allowed to listen to really unpopular opinions, or at least tolerate them, and if we feel passionately enough about them, engage with them, and destroy them publicly, I would say it would be really easy with him. Then what the fuck are we doing? You know, we're throwing all of our rights to free speech completely the fuck away to satisfy our immediate knee-jerk reaction. So I don't think that has a good ending for any of us. Part of the reason I'm pseudonymous on the internet in the first place is because I was living and working in Silicon Valley. And the fact that I don't ascribe to, you know, third wave feminism means I'm a pariah at that point already. And there's plenty of people that would feel perfectly justified punching me in the face because I don't believe in the wage gap or the patriarchy. I can explain, if you want to sit down, why I hold the positions I do. But if I'm not even allowed to, if I'm written off as a misogynist or, you know, something like that, then it's a non-starter. We've already escalated to the point of violence, you know.
Strangely, I think all three of us are kind of in the same camp on that one.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you explain the Skokie to him?
Oh, okay. So the Skokie trial, that was actually a landmark.
And at the end, how you came about it, too.
That's actually an interesting story, too. So there's a book called, and I linked it in the chat earlier, but I'll make sure that it's in the drop-down bar on the video once this is gone, archival. But there's a book called When the Nazis Came to Skokie. And this was a landmark trial that was taken on by the ACLU, which in their current state, I don't know that they would anymore. But the idea was that the local neo-Nazis wanted to march through a town that was almost entirely populated by survivors of the Holocaust. We're talking literal Holocaust survivor Jewish community. So the Nazis wanted to march through town. Now, obviously, a lot of people wanted to block them altogether. You're not allowed to march. You're not allowed to have a say at all. The ACLU's position was, you should be able to march. You should be able to say whatever the fuck you want, even though we think you're scumbags. But do it outside of this particular area, because you're not doing it for freedom of speech per se. You're doing it specifically to incite fear and violence in this area, because that's exactly what they were going for. So they did not sacrifice the free speech of the literal neo-Nazis, but at the same time, they preserved the rights of the people who lived in Skokie to not have fucking neo-Nazis kicking their doors in. But the way that the court played out, and there's some very good arguments on both sides of this trial, it's well worth reading the book. Like, I feel I didn't do it much justice giving you the Reader's Digest version here, but you can pick up the book used on Amazon for like $2. So get out there and read books, people. But
I've got
the way...
bunch of subscriptions to different services. I can get it for probably like 25
yeah, get a PDF or something. Yeah, it's not super heavy reading, but I found it fascinating. And maybe even more interesting was the way that I came about this book. It was actually recommended to me by a family friend of mine named Abraham. Now, my family's not Jewish. I don't have a drop of Ashkenazi or anything in me, but he was kind of like my adopted grandfather. Now, Abraham had survived multiple death camps. Multiple. I mean, like 6. Just unbelievable. I mean, he was in the fucking Nuremberg trials as a witness. So Abraham we were talking about neo-Nazis and stuff like that because I'd been in a lot of confrontations with him. I had a lot of stuff to say. And he was like, well, I personally believe that they should be able to say whatever the fuck they want because this is America. They should be able to say whatever the hell they want. Because the first thing they did in Germany was take away our rights to speak back against their rhetoric. And if we lose that, if we set a precedent here that says you can't speak out if you're on the wrong side of an issue, as we were in Germany as Jews, then you've already given up all your freedom. You've surrendered it all. So he said, pick up this book. Here's the ISBN number. Go buy yourself a copy. And I did. I went right out and bought it. So I was actually surprised because he was such a reactionist in some ways. He had a major distrust of anybody with any kind of Arabic descent and things like that. Like, he had his own blind spots for sure. The man was not a perfect saint despite all the pain and suffering he'd gone through. But that perspective to me was so mature and responsible that I absolutely had to, take it on board with a very serious and critical eye. So I agree. Like, I never saw it that way. That the fact that the Nazis didn't allow them to speak was a terrible precedent to carry on, regardless of who's doing it and for what reasons. No matter how noble your goals are, these tools will exist after the function for which we've created them. And who will be able to use them next? That's the question. Sorry, that's my spiel. Didn't want to cut you guys off, but Galen set that up. I mean, we've kind of got the same precedent right now. Like, a lot of people weren't too shy about giving Obama all these extraordinary privileges under, the Patriot Act and things like this that carried on from Bush, and then were actually beefed up even further, thinking, oh, well, we trust Obama, everything's going to be fine, and then Trump's elected. Now they're rethinking these. They've already created the tools and didn't take them back. Who's going to use them next? So that's always a big concern. It seems like a lot of people don't realize that once you create the tools for censorship, they'll eventually be turned on you.
Well, it's not just for me. The aspect of censorship is a big one. It's a big aspect of the thing here. But at the end of the day, how people treat one another, it matters to me. It really does. I mean, we have laws and we have rule of law because people on their own, sorry, anarchists and libertarians, they don't do well by themselves. But we don't need totalitarianism to completely dominate us in any form either. At the same time, people are very ignorant and stupid. When people vote, they would do whatever a fucking Burger King commercial told them what to do. I mean, people are driven by anything online. If you just show an emotional appeal, you can pretty much program a person and their reactions and push them. And people want to call incitement speech. I mean, well, then arrest everybody equally. I mean, you can't just cherry pick things. And how language works, there's not a universal meaning. They're different meaning systems. I mean, we've already ruled about meaning systems in the court that you can't have only one community standards. That was already a Supreme Court ruling. Okay, so and that's also just basic logic of understanding in linguistics. So we already understand these things, that there's not one universal meaning and one way of looking at things politically. We have to look at language. There's not like this some kind of liberal or conservative science that says this. That's ridiculous. That's not how science works. Science is not a particular political equation. That's retarded. But we do need to care, and it does, as I've said many times, it does take love to inquire into other people's humanity, even when they think things are offensive. And we need to resist the urge to bottle up and be less compassionate. We have to say to ourselves, that you're a fellow human And I would like to relate to that humanity, especially in a rule of law in a community where if we all start turning on one another, what are the implications of that? I mean, we will eat ourselves, and we are. There's so many people, and I think we can all agree that so much of what we see every day is so toxic, so counterproductive, so negative and hateful by everyone around us. Is just full of fury and disgust. I don't see a lot of acts of kindness, of love, and compassion all the time. I don't see a lot of people reaching out in a lot of ways. Some people do, but when you see these social groups that they're like pack animals and lynch mobs, and it's I would appeal that we need to do better, and that we should advocate for that, and we should embody that which we would like to see changed. If you don't like it, you shouldn't act it the way that you don't like, or just feel this, cut off all your emotional issues. You do care. You wouldn't be saying it if you didn't, if you wouldn't talk about this. And it's okay to be upset, I understand, but to just be emotionally void, I don't agree with that. I mean, anyone can have their opinion, of course. I just think I'm saying that I'm okay if anyone wants to have their opinion, fine, and I'll defend that. But I'm thinking it will be healthy in our environment, that we have a duty almost to step up, and especially to ensure rights in our age. When people are pushing these issues of censorship, of saying only my community standards matters and fuck everyone else's, and of course, at any time they want to have a political prisoner, and within how politics works, any person who's deemed out would then be deemed this. You are X. Fuck you. Punch in the face. Denied rights. This. That is a destructive way. That's not equal due process. That's not fairness. That's not a compassionate civilization. I don't think people are even caring about being civilized. There's no standards, as I got to in the beginning. There's no qualifiers for understanding. No one cares, as Spinoza talked about, learning for understanding. That's out the fucking door. And to learn, to understand, you must have love to inquire within your own bosom, in your own heart, and in your own mind's eyes. You need to care about the world and your fellow humanity. And I just see a lack of that. And I find that I don't know where we can go if we don't have that. Right. I don't think we can go anywhere. And I find that very troubling, and to where we get to where we're censoring and beating each other in the streets. And I find that abhorrent and undemocratic.
As much as I'd like to take the moral high ground and claim to be a pacifist, I'm not. I don't think that violence should ever be the first recourse unless you're actually preventing some other form of violence directly. But that being said, I think that Daryl Davis set a really good example by reaching out to the Klan. Like the absolute red herring whipping boy of every racist discussion either comes down to Nazis or the Klan, right? So this guy's going to the literal Klan and showing them how stupid their perspectives are just by humanizing himself. I mean, Abraham Lincoln said, "Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?" Like, that's the absolute victory. Not only have you lost an enemy, but you've gained an advocate. You're absolutely precluding yourself, and I'm not speaking directly to you on this, Josh, but by taking violence as the first recourse against, speech that you strongly disagree with, like I do with Spencer's, then you're absolutely precluding that as a possibility. Like, it's not going to happen ever. So there's definitely some wisdom that we can take on board from that perspective. Like, I've personally, as a guy who's not, super genius, not the most well-spoken person in the world, a lot of people don't trust me just based on my appearance. I've personally convinced people to take a second look at their perspectives in a lot of cases. And I think should be like our highest aspiration for these things. I think James Baldwin said something to the effect of, I write to change people's minds, because if I can change one mind, I've changed the whole world by degrees. You know, I think you can appreciate that, Josh, as a writer, that just shifting the paradigms a little bit, or putting some cognitive dissonance in somebody's head, or the people that are watching the discussion, as we're doing right now. You know, if you can put a contrary idea in their head, hey, maybe I don't have it all figured out, and let them fight it out in their own brain, then we've made a small difference in the world. And they're going to take that and turn around, and there's an amplification effect. Even if the person we're discussing with will never listen, they're either too stupid or too ignorant, or too ingrained in their own position, too convicted that they're absolutely right. Anybody who witnesses that event is going to have their paradigm shifted a little bit if you make sound arguments. And I think with somebody like Spencer, it's particularly easy to destroy his arguments because they're ridiculous. They're absolutely ridiculous. Sorry, Galen, you want to say something?
You know, coming from I did compliment, I want to make sure it's understood that I complimented that he was eloquently and on his Twitter, and he's not praised enough for his eloquence. Joshua is, and he's also a bit self-deprecating, but he is an eloquent writer and speaker who gives a renewed respect of online communication. I did respond to his, and I've been passionate about it, but he did put forth a narrative in a logical detail about what he thought and why, in an honest way. And even when I had disagreements, I wanted to state them, but I liked how I said that he put them forth, and boom, 1, 2, 3, 4. It was like bam, 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 bam. And I think that's good. He laid it out. And he laid it out on Twitter, and I've already said to him that I thought if he put it out on Facebook, he would, you know, there might be, like, I pretty much was implying there would be a good old lynch mob ready to, like, and where they would be, like, very agreeable beyond what I'm getting at to him. I was trying to, that they would be beyond that. They would be foaming at the mouth on it. I don't think he was foaming at the mouth. I've never meant to imply that if that was felt. I don't think that's in his character, but I was trying to get to something else with what he was saying. But other people are saying that, and to them it would be more ammunition. No, that was not what he intended. Not that I'm arguing that I'm arguing he shouldn't say this because of the well, they'll say this and you're inciting them. I'm not doing an incitement speech on him, but I know that he really does care on how people interpret him, and I really care about how he gets that, and he wants to be heard. I mean, the big problem right now is that, you know, there's this big world and universe we live in, and there's so much, like I said, people talking past one another. I feel the need to clarify, and I want everyone to understand it. Don't just think I'm babbling on, but the world in which we live, we look at our politics like, well, if anything happens, we go to that, and people do, and they're just automatic reaction, and this is what they should say, or just blunt fury, because now they have the internet, and they read things online and news. Well, in most places around the world, a lot of places, there's a lot of apathy, but it's also in a very bad places. But they're not very trustworthy. I mean, people seem to be very trustworthy of their news here and a lot of media, but now we have the internet media, and people argue back and forth. But I would argue that a lot of how we talk, we don't really understand ourselves. We don't understand what humanity is, what the world is, for all this internet that we have. That I'm saying that the description that we look at, that we think we're looking at, I'm saying that description that we read about and discuss every day is not the described. It is not that, because there is a blind spot there, and we're missing it. And we know that there's a gap in how we don't talk to one another. We can speak and speak, but no one understands. We can speak English to one another, but we're not listening to each other. It's like we're speaking different languages, and we're speaking different meanings. And I think that's really unfortunate. And I just feel that people can do better. Even if every day that I look online, it seems that I'm proven wrong.
Well, to that effect, and referencing what you had said, if I had said something along the lines of what I did on Facebook, there was a particular reason that I used Twitter as the means by which to put this together. A lot of my friends and connections on Facebook do tend to be, for the most part, self-described as liberal, as leftist, as I often self-describe. And I kind of knew, or at least strongly suspected, that even if I am as careful as I am being, or as I was with exactly what I said in the terms that I used, it was going to get a lot of pom-pom waving, rah, rah, you go. That wasn't what I wanted. I don't have a lot of followers or connections on Twitter, but the people who are following me there, and who I am connected with, tend to be of a more thoughtful nature. And I knew that, again, strongly suspected that if someone was going to give me a reasonable response or counter argument, that I was actually more likely going to get that by using Twitter as the vehicle for this ramble. It was a calculated risk in that, yes, a lot of the folks I'm friends with on Twitter are also very much of the left-leaning mentality, like myself. But I also know that most of them are more willing to engage in, well, let me play devil's advocate for a minute, in the event that they could fact check me or tell me, I think you're going about this the wrong way. Because I would prefer to have somebody tell me, Josh, I think you're wrong. Here's why. As opposed to have a dozen people telling me, fuck yeah, you go, and give me no explanation for why I'm right. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. And that's why that Galen thought that this would be the correct venue for that. And I agree. You know, there's a lot more room for nuance. I mean, I thought we clarified your positions a lot in this discussion. And the fact of the matter is, like, a lot of times I've spoken rather passionately about some of these things, and so has Galen, but don't take it as a personal attack, because the reason you, in my view, are perfect for this discussion is because you're very level-headed and rational, and you're willing to think and potentially change your positions and all this kind of stuff. You know, I mean, it gives this discourse value. Whereas we could have got somebody on who would absolutely say, just punch all Nazis, full stop. You know, anybody I label a Nazi, take the extreme position. Like, a lot of the times it might have seemed that you were being like strawmanned or being assigned a position that wasn't necessarily yours, which is why I wanted to clarify yours.
Can you imagine if we had Steve Shives or Peter Mosley on?
Exactly. I mean,
oh my God, it would have
precisely.
It would have been just disgusting.
Well, it would have been a cage match. It wouldn't have been a real discussion. That's exactly the problem. You know, I mean, it would have been a lot more entertaining, probably, for onlookers. Everybody likes a little bit of drama, but ultimately worthless in terms of actual dialogue and understanding the issue, you know, seeing it from different perspectives. So the fact that you are eloquent and you are able to bring that perspective to the table from somebody who's actually thinking about it honestly adds a lot of value to this. So, you know, I appreciate you be willing to do this and come forward and be like, hey, I might be wrong. Here's my positions, you know. Personally, I see myself as a fallibilist, knowing, you know, Socratically, the only thing I really know for sure is that I don't know it all. I'm going to be wrong. So in that sense, all of our positions being different and nuanced in some ways, like I can agree with Galen all day long and then find something to disagree about. We're constantly sharpening each other as human beings, not just him and I, but anybody who's willing to engage in discourse honestly, not just to win, but to understand. And I think that's the point here. Like, this isn't a formal debate where there's a winner and a loser and everybody gets to vote afterwards. It's more like, here are their positions. Let's understand them.
I got to disagree. There is a winner here. Josh actually won Twitter. I want to pronounce him the winner of Twitter, of the Twitter wars since the last years, because he actually stated that he has people in his group of people that follow him are these intelligent people. And I want to say, he won Twitter. I lost Twitter. Like, I gotta tell you, I see shit every day, and I'm just like, I'm just like, I'm vomiting, and I'm like, I mean, I look at Dev Shell, and I'm like, he's just like throwing, like I said before, there's this projectile diarrhea coming out, and I mean, you just want to press the nuke button, Chris, and just like, it's over, nuke. Where is that button? But Joshua's here saying, hey, I went there for I got really intelligent conversation. And I was like, well, you're doing better than me. So I pronounce you winner of the internet.
Well, thank you on that one. Thank you on that one. Hey, if there is any need, there are all kinds of different publishing houses that they have their own, even the individual imprints, they have their own Twitter feeds that I read through anything and everything that they fucking put out there. And I mean, who was it? HarperCollins just tweeted out like a special edition of a photography book that they put out. And oh my God, you want to take a moment on Twitter and actually enjoy the experience? Read through or look through some of the scans of the high definition, like woodland foliage and flora and fauna combination pictures they've gotten there. It's stunning. But again, I'm a book geek, so.
Right.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I want to link to any of the books that you would want to push, or if you have some bibliography somewhere, all your collected works. I think a lot of people would be interested in your books.
He's also done some BookTube, which is an intelligent part of YouTube. If you get a run at people discussing books and thoughts at length with one another and things they read, and there's a lot of tagging on, like the early YouTube days when it was more of a community. And this is one that still is a community where people actually talk back and forth and partake and send each other books. Yes.
They're fantastic folks.
And I'm really proud that he joined. I've been a longtime advocate of BookTube, so on YouTube. So if people look up BookTube and hashtags, and you go through Joshua here, you can find that. And it is a healthy part. They do have disagreements and problems that come up when a lot of this social network wars sometimes invades. But I've actually seen when a lot of this radical extremism has popped up on there, and to a guy that both Joshua and I like. I believe he got a book from him, and he was called a bunch of things and a misogynist. This guy,
Steve Donahue, right?
Right, who's a great critic.
Yeah, I'm waiting to get that book from him. He is fantastic.
He is. And he was like, what is this? What is going on here? And he actually, and other people, and I even talked with him too, that made these videos, attack videos of him. Like, how dare you in the BookTube community? And then after talking to him, it was just dialogue. It was not like what's going on Twitter and other parts of YouTube and Facebook and whatever else, or Tumblr politics. It was actually really good. And so I have to second what Joshua said, that there was actual dialogue. I'm sure there are some buttheads out there, but there were people having discussions, and no one was being a fucking, no one was throwing diarrhea at one another. So that's progress, I guess.
No one was being the Eddie Gordo of Twitter.
No.
Mash the buttons.
So in the end, I just I find it deplorable that I find that I think there are deeper implications to all of this. This is what I was trying to get at. And we need to be aware of those implications and the implications to our society, not only now, but for our children and children's children. Are we going forward in this world? We need to look at the bigger picture and how we act, and what we advocate against and for, and how we think and how we embody ourselves. It does matter. I'm very much for freedom with people, but I'm also for people being critically observing themselves and others, and I think that is highly and important. But also to have a free society, we need to look at that and how that works. And I feel that is being highly infringed upon right now for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of actually like having a discourse, I don't know how many times in this chat, I don't know if you guys are seeing this at all, but in the chat, one person has come up again and again and again, even though we haven't mentioned his name. Can you guess who that is, Galen?
I didn't even see there is a chat.
Yeah, we're live right now, so we've got a live chat of people watching. I don't know that it's very convenient to do since you're on a Chromebook, but can you guess who that is who's been coming up again and again in the chat, Galen?
Steve?
Steve Shives.
I thought it was either Steve Shives or Robert Marmolejo.
Right, birds of a feather, really. But
yeah, you mean contagious diseases go together, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And the point, the corollary here is that Steve is completely unwilling to listen to any perspective outside of his own. He's so convicted of the rightness of his position, or at least not to guess his motivations. Perhaps he's afraid of being outed as wrong think. He's afraid of being kicked out of the clique. Whatever the case is with Steve, the end result is people absolutely fucking despise Steve because he's not willing to listen to any other positions outside of his own. He's essentially made himself the target of scorn by everybody by shutting out discourse. He's lost. He's given up. He surrendered the discussion.
Well, it's not only that, but his being not also a proponent of censorship and being an admitted malicious flagger of other people, of anyone who disagrees with him and doesn't support his politics. I find that it is a deplorable position, which was shared by Robert Marmolejo, aka Rithrandill, whatever else he was. There are a lot of people who act that way, and it's really bad.
Yeah, exactly. Like not even just agreeing with the gist of a point is enough. You have to agree vehemently, violently agree. You have to be passionate. You have to be essentially a fanatic.
And you're friends with anyone who disagrees with him, even if you advocate for him in any way, if you're not in tails licking his ass, then he blocks you and advocates other people do so. So right. It's just an ugly situation, but it's not just him. And I don't think people should. I for one just want to state I don't like a lot of the criticism against him because it's lowbrow against his wife and other people. I don't like people going after people. You go for people in their arguments and their actions, not. I'm not for character assassination, and Steve knows that about me. I've talked to him about it. Right. Even though he's blocked me now because of my friendship with TJ Kirk, the Amazing Atheist, who I felt did a good video at him because it was pointed out, that Steve was, advocating flagging and stated so publicly, but he didn't like TJ pointing that out. But, right. And then the whole thing about laughing at Shayra about her being raped. It was but Steve was very hypocritical, and he doesn't believe in criticism, and that's a sad thing because you got to grow. If you want to put it out, you got to listen to criticism. When we all need criticism, we all need it. I need it. And I mean, look, I can be a fierce son of a bitch, and I do consider myself politically, or whatever you want to call it in life, an extremist, fierce, if you want to call it moderate, if you can even call me that. But I'm not of any left, right. I'm a very independent person politically. I'm very much in the study of constitutional law. I'm a very big time Hamiltonian in a lot of ways.
And clearly you had to clarify and correct me on this, or critique me on this particular situation.
On what situation?
Oh, with the tweets.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't aware that, I mean, this is probably part curse, part blessing that I'm not really involved that much with all these folks that you're mentioning, who I used to watch up until a couple of years ago. But I was not aware that Steve had openly advocated for censorship.
Oh, much worse than that. Yeah. I mean, when I was kind of in the same position as you, like I'd watch some of his earlier videos and I was like, yeah, he's all right. I think that if he gets better, like he's going to be one to watch. And then I pop back in after a year or two, and his video, he had all these presuppositional statements, and I'm like, you sound exactly like the people you're talking shit about. What the hell is this? So I asked him a very simple question. I said something like, how did you come to these conclusions? Because I don't hear any evidence for them. I just hear you saying A, therefore Z. Where are all these other steps? How do I connect these two things? Can you clarify? And he blocked me and called me a misogynist. Not in that order.
Here's the thing: is if he would have sent and said, "I would like you to read this, Chris," I guarantee you, no matter what, I bet like my life on this. I really do believe in Chris, that he would have gone out and read it. He would have learned everything. He desired to. And I know other people who've known him who've even been Patreons of him. And when they questioned him, he blocked them. Yeah, and he blocked them. If we're questioning him and even like supporting him and defending him, and then when they just asked him a question out of the blue, he's like, "Fuck you," and being an asshole. It's just, I just got to say that's just look, that's just nasty. That's just nasty. And I just think the guy personally, I think he is a weak jerk, and I feel sorry for him. I don't hate him. I don't think I think that's stupid. I mean, it's very hard to really hate anyone. I mean, when we don't like someone, I have to say, I know a lot of people go to hate, like we were getting early in this conversation. But when people die, and I've kind of, I guess we've crossed hairs, Chris and I, about this issue about mourning. But at times, I understand that certain people, we all do different ways of mourning, or if people mourn at all, but I think it's, in a lot of ways, we have it wrong, especially in the West, and I'm not precluding any other cultural divisions, just to be matter of fact. But overall, in a lot of places, we celebrate when someone who has not led a good life in our eyes dies, and we are sad when someone who we like dies. Now, I had a little bit of celebrations when like Janet Reno had died, but I got to tell you, I just put something out on a tweet. But at the same time, I have to tell you, I felt really sad. I've looked back because I was extremely critical of her for forever. I found her a disgusting disgrace to American political history and human rights. I found her atrocious to children and things she did. I felt she was a violator of children's rights horribly. She was just a disgusting person, and the Clintons' attack dog. Just a disgusting person. And the epitome of what the Clintons espouse, and why they got her, and with the illegal activities. I just disgusting. But at the same time, I felt sorry. I felt saddened for someone who had put that so much for their ego and narcissism, to put that over rule of law and to use their positions of power to hurt other people for political expenses and others. And it really, I was sad. And I think we are a greedy people. Most people online and in the West, I'm not talking that other people aren't, they are too. But I'm just talking about a certain groups of people that, and a lot of the activities in our little, like our call here, we're very greedy people overall that we speak in our little languages, games, that we're so attached and greedy for one another, and then we cry when other people that we feel we need. I just don't see a lot of love in things. I mean, certain people do love other people when they die, and it's sad. But I think that it's a lot of times we should be celebrating good lives that were lived after people die, and not be so greedy about it. And we should accept death. And but we should also be very we should stand up against certain people, of course, but in a more diplomatic and rule of law way, and advocate for these things. But we have to also mourn these people who don't do well. I mean, when I see people when they go to prison or something, it's like, fuck that person, I hope they're raped. It's like, how can anyone advocate for rape? I mean, I find that so sickening, and I see people do it often. You want to talk about a rape epidemic? It's just like, how can anyone anywhere advocate for such a thing? It's a dehumanizing tactic of breaking a person. I mean, I've known people who have gone to jail and been raped so many times and been beaten, and they came out just wanting to die, and they did, and they committed suicide, and it's just disgusting. It's like, did they kill themselves, or did our society do it? I mean, there are implications on our society for that, and most people just cheer it on like they're watching a football game. You know, I like football. I like the strategy of Bill Belichick and what he does. I learned from it. But a lot of people, everything is just a big game of us versus them. They don't need sports. They don't need any athletic competition and strategy. If they just want a lynch mob to burn people, and they want to watch people burn, and they enjoy it. I find a lot of what's going on sickening. And so when I say that we have a call for needing of empathy, I mean it. Sorry for being long-winded.
Not at all. Not at all. So since you brought up the mourning process, I mean, it's a little bit off topic, but I don't believe that it's, binary, either celebrating or mourning. Like when my best friend died, we had a funeral where everybody mourned, and we also had a wake where everybody celebrated. And I think that our natural expressions of emotion, they come from a real and a deep place, and they need to be expressed. And if you keep them inside, they're going to come out in some way or another, not necessarily a healthy one. So it's wise, I think, to go with traditions of both mourning and celebration. When we lose these transient relationships, and everything is transient. Everything in this life is transient. We think of things as permanent, but they're not. That's really the only way to be, I think, is to be real and be genuine. And don't deny yourself those tears if you want to cry, and don't deny yourself the laughter if you want to laugh, and celebrate the beautiful things that you carry with you from this person that's come and gone from your experience. And I think we need to look at all people in that way, that we're all transient and our positions are transient. How you feel right now is not eternal. How this person thinks about a certain issue right now is also not eternal. We're all constantly changing. Our DNA is being changed right now by the pollen and spores that are interacting with our bodies. I mean, literally, the bacteria in your intestines are changing you as a person. We are constantly moving, constantly changing beings. And we need to allow ourselves and each other the opportunity to change and to become better people and to see things slightly differently. Like, we all have unique perspectives that we can either use to divide us and bludgeon each other over the heads with these positions, or we can combine them and have a more holistic view of the actual reality, because we're never really going to get it. We're never really going to nail it 100%. But we can get a lot fucking closer if we're willing to hear each other out and not just talk to hear ourselves talk. And I want to thank you, Josh, for being able to have the balls to come on here and be like, hey, this is my position. I could be wrong, but hear me out clearly and understand my position. Like, I think that's an excellent role model. It's a excellent archetype for the kind of discourse I'd like to see more of personally, because we can understand each other, and we can come to a bigger worldview. Like, we all have had our positions slightly tweaked by something that was said here tonight. So that to me is a valuable thing. And that's the entire reason I'm here online in these circles. 99% of the time listening to bullshit that I don't feel is even worth replying to because it's too buried in ignorance and it's too protected from outside opinions. You know what I mean? And that's the big problem. And that's why Steve Shives has come up so many times tonight, because he's not willing to fucking be part of the conversation. He's not willing to contribute. It's my narrow perspective, my little myopic view of the world is the only one. And if you can't accept that, then get the fuck out. That's not productive.
Well, I think that's a lot of people are like that online.
A lot of people are like that.
A lot of people on any so-called side are like that. And I think that when we start, like I said, what are qualifiers for calling people Nazis? Because people go around saying they easily go around and saying, and once someone is evilly labeled something, we're advocating. People are literally advocating for violence, and it's trending in articles and major publications, and historic publications that go back over 150 years are publishing an advocation of something. Proudly. We have to look at the big picture here of what this is for all of us and the repercussions of it and the blowback. And the blowback is going to be severe, and there are going to be people hurt. Now, I'm saying that you can't go around and arresting everyone for censorship. I mean, incitement speech. I mean, people go around incitement. It's like the hardest thing to prove. Well, what made you do this? You know, like he made me punch him. It's like, well, why? And
Right.
like, wait, like it's like I didn't like what Joshua said with that fucking character, and this is bigoted because of my this and this and this and that, and I listed 50 fucking pages of reason why I felt the need to bomb Josh, you know, and kill his kid and his family and like fuck him and what he was advocating for, and like a person can do this. There are so many implications of how people go around saying, well, you're this. And it's like, well, you incited me. You made me do it. It's like, first of all, I control my feelings. How I interpret things. First of all, my interpretation of what Josh has said, it's my control. Okay, that's my control. I have my responsibility. There's one thing in the language of online cultures and languages, cultural languages that are spoken in meanings that you don't hear much is I'm responsible. I'm very responsible, and other people, everyone owning what they do. You have a lot of finger pointing and blaming and scapegoating.
Confession to implication versus pointing of inference.
Yeah. And I find this scapegoating, it's like a scapegoating culture we live in. And that is finding someone to burn an effigy. It's like I used to say it's of the month, then it was like of the week, and it's like of the minute. And like, what's next? It's like what groups of people, and that's really where we are. It's like, right. What groups of people to be burned in effigy now? And it's like, well, and next it's everyone just burn everybody.
Right, Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, it's Lord of the Flies. And do we want to live in that society?
No.
I want to speak passionately against it, but I can't speak passionately against it by doing it in the way they do it, the way they're going about. We have to find out a different way.
Considering how much like Piggy I am, I don't like the way that the story ends for him, so I vote no.
Piggy, no.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, if anybody out there hasn't read Lord of the Flies, it's a very interesting perspective on how even if we've managed to solve our immediate problems, we're going to make them. Humans need something to overcome.
Thank you for catching the reference too on the first pass by.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been in the back of my mind all this time. It's ironic, speaking of literature, seeing all of a sudden since Trump was elected, 1984 suddenly becoming so popular, don't you think? I mean,
yes, and the fact that the original publishers have now ordered a new printing They've also put in a request to Daniel Sanderson and company, who are artistic illustrators of limited editions of classic novels. They are going to be putting forth they're dubbing it the 2017 special edition. But I think we all can kind of get an idea of what makes it so special.
Edward Snowden should write a new preface to it.
That'd be
Right?
perfect.
And here's the thing. Here's the really ironic thing for me. I mean, Orwell was a extreme anti-totalitarian, and both the left and the right, or elements thereof, in our current political dichotomy, are advocating for some level of totalitarianism. And primarily, he was speaking out against communist authoritarianism, which is extremely left-wing if you're not well-versed in it, you know? Right. I was suggesting earlier on Twitter, maybe in addition to reading 1984, which I encourage everybody to do, they should also read fucking Animal Farm.
I'm not such a big fan of Animal Farm so much as 1984, but I did enjoy it as well.
It's not a long book, but it seems like we're bound and determined on the left in the United States to become totalitarian, and that to me is a frightening precedent. Like, as much as I absolutely despise Trump, well before he ran for office, I was never a fan of Trump in any fashion. But right now, the scary thing to me is the actions and the rhetoric coming from people that I'm more closely politically aligned with on the left, being willing to use literal Nazi tactics, totalitarian tactics to get their way. Like, have we learned nothing from history? Are we completely ignorant of it? What the fuck are we doing?
And there is actually a free to read current work on a website called Wattpad. It's actually a book that I recently reviewed. It's called Souls for Suffering by James Villinger. It has a heavy component of this looking at totalitarian nation states and taking a look at how they end up influencing in their societies and how they operate. And it's actually, it's free to read, so I would highly recommend folks check that out as well.
I'm gonna have to go. I hope you do continue a little bit longer, because I think you have a lot to say. But I would like to put forth that, we get into things about Orwell and looking in a brave new world. And a lot of what we get into with people talking about Nazism, and we talk about World War II and totalitarianism. But, when you get into studies of that, you see some existentialist thinkers thinking about that. And I got a lot from Wittgenstein on that. But most people don't read a lot of philosophers and how they actually responded. What are the implications of a war where so many millions died? A good portion of humanity, a large percentage of humanity was wiped out because we were killing and murdering each other and spreading disease and fighting, and righteously or not or whatever. We were such a bloodthirsty, monstrous. I mean, all sides could be convicted of war crimes, every country, of mass war crimes, U.S. included, of course. It was outrageous what happened. People who glorify that, I just find abhorrent. It was a sickening deal, and it should be not glorified. It should be like, well, we're still here, and that's great. But it was a monstrous activity. It brought out the worst in humanity in a lot of ways. It really did, a lot of that. And then you have people who look at it and the implications and the aftermath of that, like Hannah Arendt, the philosopher, great female philosopher. It's not a feminist or anything, but she's kind of looked over. But she looked into the origins of totalitarianism. She talked about how we try people and we only look for symbolic hatred with mock trials, and trying those people in political groups we don't like. And some people will say, well, that's just too high reading for me. Well, maybe we need to up the level of our standards so we can learn from mass mistakes. Maybe we need to look at ourselves as a social biological species, and why we had wars, and where are the studies on war with humanity, and why we're acting this way, and especially in the age of the internet, when we have the globalism that has come so together, where we're interconnected 24 hours a day. We're not even studying ourselves. A species that doesn't understand itself, doesn't know what its objectives and problems are to transcend. It doesn't know in its environment. No organism that doesn't understand those things in the level that we are can never be successful, and we're headed to doom. And I find that sad for such a species with such potential as we do. We can write beautiful works. We can show great humanity, but we're also so disgusting. We have to look at our online conduct and how we advocate things in our simplistic little lives. A lot of people say, well, I don't matter. Joshua prefaced everything. He said, well, I'm just a little person. Well, you matter to me. And I want that to be understand that the people listening, you matter to me. I care. So that's my final statement.
Thank you.
And before you drop, Galen, I just wanted to point out, since you don't have the chat up, that a lot of the people, when you announced that you were kind of wrapping it up, wanted to wish you well. And thanked you very much for being on, even though you're not feeling great. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you much, brother.
So, Josh, if you want to have the final word here, I think it's only fair. Galen tends to have a lot to say, which is one of the things a lot of people tend to either love or hate about the man. But
Right.
nobody, I think, can accuse him of not thinking through his positions in any case. So if you have something else you want to add to anything, or anything else, even if it's a non sequitur at this point, feel free to chime in.
Well, no, on the, that's why people love him or hate him. He does think through everything. And that's one of the less common factors of him as like a YouTuber, or back when Blog TV was still up and running, when that was in operation. One of the things I've always enjoyed about Galen is that he is willing to put in the time and effort to think through point by point precisely what he wants to go over or touch upon in his given portion of any conversation or dialogue. I try to do that, at least in some regards, in some respects. I don't have the same talent for it without putting it into some kind of written format. I mean, you got to bear in mind, I pulled this thing out earlier and referenced it. I had to refer to this several times throughout even just writing the tweets. Why? Because if I don't write it down, I'm going to forget it. I have a brain like a colander that way. Everything just flows in, but then leaks right the fuck back out. That's why the written word is important to me. I have to write it down, or else it's not sticking around. But also, I know that he is very much like me in that he's not going to put forth the effort if it is ultimately not really something that is going to have a positive effect. One of the reasons I don't make social or political commentary frequently on any of my social media accounts largely is because that's not why people first kind of get to know me in the first place anyway. Most people who I've touched base with on YouTube and other places online, Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, it's because there's some crossover of these folks were members of the atheist YouTube community, which years and years ago I considered myself a member of. I got to chit-chatting with these folks, had some good humorous conversations, and then I roped it, as I always try to, into books and writing, or Dungeons and Dragons, or some geekery to which I am a huge proponent. So that's my passion. Those are my games, man. Is narrative and things associated with geekery and telling a story.
Well, I think like if we all came to the table with exactly the same positions and the same methods for communication and all this kind of stuff, not only would we not effectively reach everybody, but it would be fucking boring. It would be dull.
It would become this dry, homogenous, androgynous, blech.
Right, devoid of all life, really. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, the way you process information and that kind of stuff. It has advantages and disadvantages, as with every fucking thing. So, like, since you're on here, since you've come through to put yourself through the Galen ringer and all this, I think it's only fair. If you were to recommend one book that you've written over the years, just one, like an introduction to your works, what would it be? What would be that book that has something special for you in it?
Something special for me. The problem for me is that I have a couple of different series, and there's at least one title from each of these series that has been my greatest love in that particular series.
Right.
In terms of horror, I would have to say, try to anybody who's looking, look for, go to untreatedreads.com and find or look up In Amelia We Do Not Trust, which is it's a collection of shorts. It's the second collection of Amelia City short stories. The first collection, which is Roads Through Amelia, you can only get that on Amazon right now. In terms of fantasy, the one story that I have probably been proudest of thus far was A Midwestern Yankee in King Ovin's Court. Yeah, which was
a little nod to Clemens there, yeah.
Yes. And I had a great deal of fun with those stories. The one that I get asked about the most, though, from like Danny, Belgian Dan, I don't know if you know him. Great dude. Good friend of mine for a number of years here online. Him and Frank and Surya Infindicano and a lot of my other friends who I chit-chat with routinely, they always bring up Motor City Shambler, which is my first Bob the Zombie book.
Okay.
It's a first-person perspective journal by a gentleman by the name of Bob. He wants to let you know what it was like during the zombie apocalypse in the city of Detroit as a member of the undead who can think.
I've heard a lot of my literary geek friends talk about this book. I need to read more fiction. That's one of my weak spots right now. I used to digest about a book a day when I was a bit younger, but I haven't had the time for it. I'm reading constantly, but none of it's really for pleasure these days.
You've actually heard mention of the book?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That surprises you?
It does a little bit. Kind of, like I said, I've been a small fry for like a decade. So,
well, you'd be surprised how many cult followings can spring up around relatively low key writers. So, yeah. So be encouraged a little bit. Some people are reading and talking about your books.
Cool. It's always good.
And hopefully, I don't have a particularly big following, but maybe you'll introduce some more people to your literature along the way, huh? I'll make sure to put some links in the drop down bar here once we've finished streaming. So
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys having me on. And I do hope I didn't overly bore anybody or come across as too much of a yutz. I did say I was going to get pounded.
Well, we warned them coming in that it wasn't going to be a drama fest. So those brave souls who stuck around to actually listen to what the fuck we had to say, kudos to you.
Indeed.
But there's plenty of drama. There's plenty of drama on YouTube. If you're looking for it, you're going to find it. So
I stick so much to BookTube and video game reviews and stuff that I thankfully I avoid a lot of that.
So there's some people in the chat right now who are saying, tell us more about the books. Sounds awesome. So
well, okay. Well, the Roads Through Amelia, the Amelia City Stories series, is a short story collection of tales all set in the fictional county of Amelia in Iowa. And in each one of these tales, there is something not quite right about the township in which people live. Some of these stories are creature features. Some of them are more, I was going for more of a sense of dread and doom. But in all of them, over the course of the last 6-7 years, I've constructed a mythology around Amelia City. Everyone who lives there, who's born and raised there, or spends any amount of time there, comes to realize that while other towns and cities across America have their own folklore and urban legends, there's a slight problem with Amelia City in that their folklore and urban legends tend to have an awful lot of physical evidence for them probably being true. And it's unnerving, but people don't feel like there's anything they can really do. It's just, this is where they live. And besides which, if only 20 or 30 people go missing or turn up dead in a city of, you know, a good-sized metropolitan area, a city like the size of Des Moines, most people are going to write it off as, it's just fairy tales, it's just folklore, until they find their mother turned inside out, hung from her intestines in the morning.
So this is exactly the kind of thing you want to read to your kids as a bedtime story, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, lovely stuff. Not exact, and yeah, there is one, and there is a connection in the mythology. There are several creatures that occur in several of these stories, referred to as the strangers, and they all seem to have a hierarchy. And there's another creature by the name of Quoth, a raven-headed gentleman in a slender black and white checkerboard game show host's Armani suit with a slim, narrowing red tie, upon which sits a single clasp in the shape of 4 hooked blue claws, a single horizontal line joining their rounded tops. As he smiles at you with those needle-like teeth, affecting kindness and friendliness, while at the same time with his eyes, which are purest black, conveying nothing, can say with a smile, "Go ahead, call me Tweety Bird. See about how far that gets you." This is a character who I allowed to kill off Santa Claus in a story, so.
I just got to give you the snaps for having a character called Quoth the Raven.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, man. Talk about fan service for literary geeks, huh?
Yes, big time. And he's actually in a couple of stories he's in, when he conveys his name to protagonists / victims. There's a couple of instances where they go, "Really? Come on." And he's like, "Look, I didn't choose the name. The master chose it for me. He thought it would be amusing." So he's not exactly a fan.
So there's self-awareness there. Yes,
there's certainly a bit of, yeah, I gotta deal with this. Now, this character, Quoth, is in the third, he's also the primary antagonist in the third Kathy Potts fantasy novel, which that series starts with a Midwestern Yankee. The third novel is Kingdom No More, and Quoth is the primary antagonist in that tale. Now, Amelia City and the Kathy Potts stories are not connected. They're not even in the same reality. But he's there. He is present. There are connections to a lot of my works. I've worked overtime to draw these lines between them to convey a sense of there is something greater at play here. But the Bob the Zombie novels, they are standalone, all 3 of them. Starts off with Motor City Shambler, Mr. Robert Stevenson, who he's a salesman from Detroit. He goes to visit family in his hometown of Angola, New York, which, self-reference, is my hometown. And while walking in the woods, just enjoying the country scenery, some maniac comes running through the woods and bites him in the arm. And he manages to get away from the guy, and he gets back home, and he's feeling a little sick, but nothing too big. And then he passes out one afternoon. And he's asleep for, he doesn't know how long. But when he gets up, he tries to say something along the lines of, oh man, what happened? And all that comes out is, Motor City Shambler was written with more tongue-in-cheek humor and my, at that time, complete disdain for humanity as a whole.
I know you probably didn't intend to draw these parallels, but the introduction, at least that you gave, kind of reminds me of Kafka's Transformation.
I did not intend that, but yeah, that is okay. I can see how that would.
I think it has the same vibe. You know what I mean? The like, oh, gross.
Right, there's something unpleasant. One of my favorite scenes or descriptions to write in that first Bob the Zombie book was he comes across another thinking zombie. The undead in these works can communicate with each other in a way. If they're in close proximity, they can kind of share a form of telepathy, as it were, because they don't have the vocal ability to always speak because they are rotting, they're degenerating. I don't give any explanation for how all this works. Why? Because I don't know how the fuck it would work. Plus, hey, it's fiction.
We'll call it Star Trek science.
Exactly. There you go. But Bob realizes he feels a pressure in his lower region. And this other zombie tells him, or communicates to him, oh, yeah, go ahead and use the bathroom. It's down the hall. So he goes and he hops a squat to take a shit. And when he's getting up from the toilet, he feels this weird pulling sensation, hears a rip. And when he looks down, he finds a strip of his own ass sitting on the toilet seat. And he says, there's a lot of things that have horrified me about toilets in my time. I never thought seeing my own ass on part of it would be one of those things.
I've been to that party. Jeez, man. More bedtime stories for the little ones.
I started off as a fantasy author who occasionally dabbled in horror. But after about 4 or 5 years, I started leaning a lot more towards horror and unpleasant science fiction. And now I'm predominantly a horror writer who still occasionally does fantasy.
Well, that's pretty awesome. I think we have a lot of kind of literary geeks, and those of at least the same general ilk in terms of like intellectually among people that would watch my videos. So hopefully you'll find some new fans amid the crowd.
That'd be great.
We'll see. Yeah, but I'm gonna check some of this out myself.
All right. Well, thank you, Mitch.
After we get off this hangout, which let's wrap it up. Hit me up with the links, and I'll make sure that they're in the drop down here. We'll make sure people get the information.
I can do that.
So thank you again a million times over for having this public discussion, and I hope something good's come out of this. Like it was never intended to be a dog pile or a beatdown or a public shaming or anything like this. More like airing different perspectives.
No,
and letting everybody come to their own conclusion.
And that's the thing, is he definitely did point out a couple of factors in all of this that I hadn't considered before I wrote what I wrote. That kind of maybe had to go, that are at that moment once he clarified for me, and even now I'm still thinking, how did I not catch that? I really need to consider that.
Well, because you're fallible, goddamn human being,
Indeed.
To me, like I've learned so much since I've surrounded myself in these circles. Like there's so many different perspectives, those willing to actually talk to you. And unfortunately, there's not enough of those these days. There's a lot of people that just want to point their finger and dictate what you should be thinking rather than explaining their perspective, being willing to listen in return. But those few who have done that and taken that extra step have changed my paradigms throughout this process of the last few years. And as long as there are people like that out there that have different views from me, that's going to continue to happen. I'm going to continue to shift my perspective based on new information that comes in. Sometimes I'm not going to think I'm wrong, even if I am. Sometimes I'm going to be like, you know what? Fuck. I didn't see it that way. That's a completely different way of looking at this. So that being said, thank you everybody for hanging out in the stream. That was not at all dramatic and exciting, but hopefully we've said a few interesting things that made it worthwhile to stick around for these several hours. So until next time, thanks again, Josh. And I'll make sure that your Twitter handle is also in the link if anybody wants to follow you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Have a good one, everybody.